back to the notions of jealousy and greed, this issue of environment shaping behavior, which is a very big topic, which I hope you guys can elaborate more on broadly, because I think this is one that comes up repeatedly. People kind of feel like, when I get emails from people, they tend to always come from a disposition that they think what they understand is just universal. So I want to open the floor to you guys of all the things that we've addressed in the past. If there's anything that we haven't talked about regarding environment shaping behavior, I'd love for you to open that up. And the first question I have for that actually is, Jacque, what would you recommend for people to begin reading? So you mentioned Jacques Loeb, for example. Are there any other people that talk about this, like books, like from the reading list, that you would recommend for the public?
Mind in the Making by James Harvey Robinson, or The Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase, or Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski. Okay. There are many books on sociology, anthropology, B.F. Skinner, on behavior. But of course, what I want to talk about is how we get to be the way we are.
Sure.
If you don't understand the effects of environment on behavior, if you take a nice Jewish boy and bring him up in Nazi Germany as a baby, and all he hears is Heil Hitler, Deutschland over alles, he's going to become a Nazi. And if you take a Nazi baby and bring him up by an Israeli family, meaning an Israeli environment, he's going to become a nice Jewish boy. And if you take a nice Jewish boy and bring him up in Ireland, he's going to speak with an Irish brogue, and there's not a thing he can do about it. Now, if you're brought up in France, say 10 years, then you move to Germany and you live there 10 years, you will speak with a German-French accent. And if you're brought up in the Deep South, you'll speak as a Southerner would. And if you're brought up in an uneducated region of the South, you'd speak against the blacks, against the Jews, against foreigners, if that's the environment you're exposed to. It's not so much, a lot of the geneticists think that there are genes that are democratic genes that give you a propensity toward becoming a Democrat. Some believe that there's such a thing as a criminal gene. It seems so obvious that the environment generates aberrant behavior.
Most of the members listening right now, I think, have a decent sense of this, though they still have certain issues where they think about the larger problems, the more extreme issues of a rapist or a murderer and things like this. And,
okay.
Well, go ahead.
Say two guys disagree with each other, and they get in a fight in a bar room, and one guy punches another guy, and he falls with his head against some concrete block, and he dies. Is he a murderer? Suppose he socked him, and he fell in an area where he didn't die. When is a person a criminal? In other words, if you're brought up in an emotional environment, very emotional, say early primitive society, where you say you let that guy look at your sister that way. If you're brought up in that kind of society, you say, I want to punch the hell out of that guy. And if you're punching him, if you're helping to kill him, strike him a certain way, you're a murderer. Don't you see? And if another person says, well, I got to feed my family, I think I'll rob a bank. Well, when he goes in there with a gun, if a certain person threatens him, he instantaneously pulls a trigger. He's now a murderer. If he happens not to, he's not a murderer. He's just a bank robber. So I would say people poorly equipped intellectually that don't know how to solve problems. When I was a kid during the last Depression, if I wanted to eat, I would knock at the door of a house and I'd say, can I mow your lawn or do something for a sandwich? Whereas other kids might sneak in the back way and try to steal food from the refrigerators. They don't have the tools to handle problems. A lot of people are poorly equipped to deal with problem solving. Some people make a fist to solve the problem. When their wife doesn't agree with them, they beat them up because they don't have enough tools to know what else can be done. There are many ways of bridging the difference. The same with a rapist. A rapist is a person that's been brought up in an environment where they think about sex in terms of rape, because they are not good, or they're not able to attain sex. And so when they rape, they associate rape and force with pleasure. And so they become conditioned. You have to watch children. You know, when I was a kid, this may seem strange to most of you, but the kids in my neighborhood used to tie a cat to the railroad tracks. Why did they do that? Because they needed excitement in their life. There was no excitement. And they used to stand near subway terminals and drop bricks down on the subway trains. What they really needed was excitement in their lives. You know, again, when I was a kid, as you probably know by now, I'm 93 years old. When I was a kid, it was normal to create your own excitement because there's not enough excitement, and motion pictures serve that need to a limited extent. But really, all kids need excitement in their lives. They need the experience of solving problems. They need adventure. They need all the things that make a well-rounded intellect. If they don't get that, I'm going to tell you what used to happen. I haven't seen it today. But people, when I was a kid, would sit up on a telephone pole. They'd sit on a telephone pole for 8 days trying to break the world record. Why do they do that? They're trying to say something. They're trying to say, damn it, I exist, look at me. That's why guys drive racing cars. They don't drive racing cars because they're interested in improving a carburetor or getting better mileage or testing a vehicle. They do it for ego reasons. When they drive that race car, everybody respects them. Boy, you did a good job. You won that race. But let me tell you this. If that car bangs into the wall, bursts into flames, and the guy is burned alive, they say, boy, you should have been there. You don't know what you missed. The things that we call right and normal will not exist in the future.
Right. Yeah, those are great points. I think that's the difficult thing I've had communicating, and I've gotten.
Now, are they to blame? A lot of people think, well, they should think about those things. You can't think outside of your culture. I've never known of a Chinese baby born speaking Chinese without indoctrination. I've never known of an English baby speaking English at birth without indoctrination. I've never known of a person flying a machine, an airplane, without going to some kind of school studying the principles of flight. I've never known of an engineer producing engineering solutions without having been immersed in an engineering environment in university or through books or through education. Education means modifying the value system. So if we understand that, there's no hatred, no matter what a person is. If a person is brought up to beat up blacks or Afro-Americans, it's the environment they come from that indoctrinates those values. Can you understand that? In the future, no one will be blamed for their behavior, but they'll be helped out of those patterns of behavior. Putting a person in prison is not the answer to problems. It costs a lot of money to keep them there. It's better to educate them. But the studies of the future will be in human behavioral modification. The study of human behavior, our values, how we get there, what creativity is, what an artist has, what qualities they have, what makes them enabled to become great artists or great writers. All those things can be defined. They're no longer mystery. And as long as psychiatrists and psychologists try to adjust people to this chaotic system, there's got to be something wrong with them. As long as we use militarism and force and laws, there's something wrong with your society, some limiting factors. These are the areas that need elaboration on in order to help people understand what we are, how we come to be the way we are. I don't expect to answer all the questions in this one shot, but this is something I'd like you to think about. And if you have any questions regarding what I said, please bring up your contradictions. But don't say it'll never work. It's human nature.
Right.
Just say, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I think the points you just made really summarize probably the most important attributes, I think you might agree, of what the Venus Project is about. It's about understanding nature. It's about understanding ourselves and aligning accordingly with the cause and effect reality. And I think it's, of course, very profound for people to think of themselves as, essentially machines, is sort of what you denote, is that we are not autonomous. We are groomed by the environment that we have been born into, and we behave accordingly. And what do you say to people that feel that it dehumanizes them, that think that they have free will, that they have choice? I mean, how do you respond to people that get emotionally offended?
Well, they've never been given the tools to understand where their values come from.
Right.
Why they find certain things painful. To me, in the early days when the Romans used to feed Christians to lions, I didn't think they were bad people. I think they were following the traditions of their culture.
Right.
So the whole family, as I pointed out many times before, used to come Saturday and Sunday to watch Christians being fed to lions. Now, Christians think they were evil or bad people. It's just like today we go to a prize fight. In the future, it'd be unthinkable to watch two people beat the hell out of each other.
Right.
You live in a very sick society, aberrated. Otherwise, psychiatry and psychology would organize into systems to discourage aberrant behavior in our schools, our football games. You don't have a sane society. You don't live in a sane world, not yet, at least. And I hope that someday we will not mistreat people that have been aberrated.
Right, right. I think that's, again, a brilliant point. It goes to remove the notion of judgment that everyone falls back into in our current world. Everyone just judges each other and throws out labels and dismisses them, and therefore they can justify the electric chair, they can justify these cold prison cells which don't do anything to rehabilitate a human being.
They don't even know how, Peter.
Sure.
It's a very unfortunate situation.
It is.
The world we live in is barbaric, very crude, not because people are bad,
right,
because they really don't have leadership that does honest inquiry into the nature of the world we live in, our behavior, and the forces that society impinge upon people. And the word, like trying to find the cause of things, really, there are no single causes. There are many interacting variables. And that's an environment of music. If a kid's to become an engineer, you send them to university, which is an engineering environment. That's what I mean by environment. I mean the prime effectors of that kind of behavior. And if you want to learn Spanish, you go to a Spanish class. That's what I mean by environment. And normal people are brought up in an aberrated environment where they get angry, they make a fist, they get into fights, they disagree. What they have to learn is how to relate to others and honestly disagree without getting angry. See, this kind of training is missing in school. In schools, they have debate. A debating team is out there to win, not to share ideas. So in the future, instead of debating teams, you have dialogue, sharing ideas where I learned a lot from you, and I hope you've learned something from me. But in a debate, you go there to win. When you go to a ball game, you hope that the team you favor wins. Someday we'll be able to go to a ball game and watch two teams play and say, Johnson was great on this team and Harrison was great on the other. But when you go rooting for your own kind, that produces aberrant behavior. Unfortunately, there are many fights at ball games, physical disagreements where they punch one another. And then you've got boxing, where two people punch the hell out of each other. For what? For some aberrated people that go to see that thing? Look, I'm not condemning you if you go to prize fights. I know you've been brought up in an environment where that is normal. I cannot condemn you for going to an air show to watch the Blue Angels fly upside down near the ground. Why should they have to do that to amuse a lot of people that are aberrated? So I think in the future there will be no people walking a tight wire between buildings and nobody doing anything like flying upside down through a hangar to produce sensation and nurture aberrant behavior. Look, I'm not against people developing their skills, but beating the other fellow is not a skill. It's aberrant behavior. I don't like people boxing in a ring because it damages the brain of both of them. So I see no future in that. I don't like people wrestling with each other and throwing each other down toward the ground. That doesn't produce anything. Nothing intelligent comes out of that. There are many ways you can swim, go in for fancy diving without hurting anybody. There are many things you can do if you want to without hurting other people.
That kind of competition in sports really just gives people a propensity to use them for war. You know, the mentality of us against them.
Right.
So I'm going to say this clearly, if I can, that the world you live in is essentially insufficient to produce behavior that's sane. Aberrant behavior is not an inborn thing unless it's a degenerative disease of the brain. And if that occurs, we certainly don't put people in jail. And if they've been conditioned to be thieves, liars, or serial killers, it's our job to undo those things. So, in other words, if you have an automobile and it veers to the right, you can kick the fenders or you can check your tire pressure. If the tire pressure is uneven, it'll veer to the right or left. And the same with the steering column. You have to check the physical apparatus just as an electrical engineer does. When he checks your computer out, he checks area by area. In human behavior, you have people put in jail for aberrant behavior, but we never touch the environment that generates that behavior. Even psychologists and psychiatrists work on individuals. It's really not the individual. It's the environment that they're reared in that creates social insufficiency and behavioral insufficiency. They're working ass backwards when you work on a person. It would take you years if you work on a person and they return to the same aberrated environment. It's not going to help very much. So child molesters are not born. They're made that way through certain scales of behavior which we don't pay attention to. And psychologists that try to adjust you to this system have to be somewhat of a prune head that is insufficiently educated.
Right.
I just want to mention that a lot of parents in some way really understand this, maybe won't admit it, but even they, when they see their kids hanging around with other kids that they think are detrimental, they'll pull them away, or they won't allow them to hang around with them. So if they didn't feel it was inborn that they would come out a certain way, then they wouldn't do that.
Right. I think it's amazing how most people seem to understand.
You really have to alter the society that produces the kind of values that are aberrant, that make it difficult for people to relate to one another. I believe that that is somewhat deliberate in our educational system. I go along with the concept of Einstein that said that he felt patriotism is a disease in that it separates people and it doesn't help us understand the contributions made by other nations. Our major problem, if I can tackle that now,
Sure.
is really the difference between science and politics. In politics, you have a lot of usually businessmen or lawyers trying to work out a system in which no research is done at all. If you get into the physical sciences, what they do is they come up with a concept of structure, and then they test that concept. They twist the structure, pull it apart, and if they're putting up a building, they precast the concrete and put it in a compression machine to see what kind of loading it can stand. If they make an airplane, they study aerodynamics, how the air flows over the wing and the body in order to arrive at an operating system. But in politics, it's as old as time. They sit around discussing things and they're never put to test. And so politics really can't go anywhere because it doesn't deal with anything. It deals with opinions, feelings, which are great 200 years ago. But today, we really have to work with a different system. And the system that I'm about to talk about is the procedural system of the Venus Project. In other words, instead of designing buildings and putting people in them and houses, what we design is an entire system. So the city itself is based on the carrying capacity of the environment. So is the whole project. In other words, as we bring nations together to work as a cooperative team on the earth, take care of the environment, restore the oceans, rebuild the reefs, and restructure our education so it's relevant to conditions that threaten people. Instead of killing one another as they do in wars, as politicians usually conclude, we would train people or educate people to become good at problem solving. So what we have to do is learn how to bridge the difference between nations, not kill. Killing is a very old solution. It never worked. It always produced hatred and resentment and destruction and pollution in the environment. There's just no limit to the amount of pollution if we get into another military conflict. So the military conflict is a supreme failure of nations to bridge the difference. And I feel that the only way you can do that, bridge the difference between nations, is make them part of a global system in which all of the world's resources are shared by all the world's people. As long as you've got separate nations that control resources or the greater deal of the world's resources, you are going to have trouble. All nations want a piece of the pie, and that's your problem. The same with labor unions. Labor unions are very good for labor, but if the price that they demand goes up, the price of the car goes up. So labor unions are interested in getting a piece of the pie. I'm interested in all people getting a piece of the pie, not fighting for any group. I'm not interested in women's rights, Jewish rights, Polish rights. I think that all people should have free access to the necessities of life without servitude or debt of any kind. Anything less than that will be a continuation of the same problems we've had for centuries. In fact, that we've had the same problems for hundreds of years, and normal people are brought up to believe that that's human nature, because the conditions have always been that of scarcity, deprivation, and artificiality. One of the major forms of artificiality would be the concept of a free society or a democratic society. You've never had a democratic society. In a truly democratic society, you would hear all points of view on Sunday, all concepts of religion, different concepts, different presentations, including atheism, agnosticism, and it would be up to the American people to turn it off. But when you've got one point of view on the air, every broadcasting company, remember, has vested interest. They depend on funding for advertising, and they sell corporate interest. So how are they going to be objective? You have military people on the air and all the major broadcasting companies talking about the war. You don't have sociologists, social scientists, social psychologists giving their point of view. Of course you don't realize what's missing, because you've never heard the truth. The truth is that we've never had democracy. In a democratic society, all children will be given the best of education without a price tag. In a democratic society, all children would have access to nutritious food. In a truly democratic society, you would hear all points of view. Just as if a person accuses you of something, you have the right to face your accuser in court. When our president talks against another nation, you should invite the prime minister of that nation to give his point of view. We don't have to agree with it. Then we should invite the prime minister of Sweden, who says they're both wrong. This is how I see it. That would be a democratic society. Every point of view on the air. You've never had that, and you will not have that as long as you stress the free enterprise or the monetary system. Any conversations other than that which supports the monetary system would be a threat to this system. Even the army is artificial. Even the war is artificial. Most wars are not about bringing democracy to other nations. It's about resources. It's about oil, or it's about cheap labor, or it's nothing to do with democracy. In fact, if you really think about it, you find that you can't go to a country where people have an established system, whatever that is, where they have 10 wives or 15 wives. You can't verbally change them. They've been that way for hundreds of years. So the only way to bridge the difference between nations is not through military systems. It's by sharing that which we have in common. All nations need clean air, clean water, arable land, good nutrition, and a relevant education. So you start with the areas we have in common. Eventually, all people will pick up technology because it's the only thing that can add to their culture and minimize the amount of stress and give us more time to spend with our families. Through technology, through machines, we can do away with repetitive, boring jobs, which most people hate. And in that way, we can send people back to school to study things that become relevant to problem solving. Imagine if all the soldiers, instead of trained to be killing machines, they were trained to be problem solvers. What a wonderful world we could have. When you think of all the money nations spend on military and defense systems, which are of no use at all, produce nothing valuable for people. They say, well, it advances electronics. That's not true. We don't put up appropriations to advance electronics. Why don't we do that? Because it's not good business. In military systems, you have to update all the equipment, all the airplanes, all the submarines, all the battleships have to be updated. So there's a hell of a lot of money in war. If war were real, they would never conscript the lives of young men to serve their country. They would conscript all the war industries for the duration of the war and then give it back to industry after the war. Just like a soldier puts up his life for this country, no one should make profit out of war. I mean selling machine guns, submarines, aircraft. All that is big business. And as long as that exists, the war is ultimately corrupt.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. Very well stated. Thank you for that. One of the things that I wanted to bring up to you, I've been learning a lot about advanced technologies. Would you mind discussing the futile nature of paper proclamations and how they don't address any of the root issues at hand?
Well, that gives us the illusion of freedom, paper proclamation, human rights.
Right.
Actually, if you don't have money, you can't afford surgery if you need it. And if you don't have enough money, you can't afford to go to different doctors until you find out what the problem is. A lot of people can't even afford to consider going to a doctor. So if you earn minimum wage, you have to buy a used car if you can afford it. And the used car breaks down more often than a new car. And if your kid gets sick, you have to take a day off work and go to the clinic. So many people are so much in debt, they can't even afford the luxury of thinking about a future possibility. They don't even think of a world cruise because it's outside their frame of reference. So don't talk about democracy so much. You don't have it. You've never had it. In a democracy, people will have access to medical care, and access to the best schools in the world without a price tag. As long as you've got a price tag, you don't have democracy.
Or equality. We say you're really as free as your purchasing power in this country.
Yes. Yeah, I think whenever money is involved, there is inherently...
Rather than decoration, we will move toward the problem solving.
It's really not the decoration that makes you an individual either. Usually they're just following fads within their own age range or something like that. But it's how you think that makes you an individual and how creative you are for the benefit of everyone that makes you more productive rather than vanity or trying to make ornament on yourself. And, you know, a lot of times women put makeup and wear ornaments and they're trying to attract men. You know, it's such a false type of thing than learning how to get along and relate to people, not on that level. And it's pushed upon people because people make money from it, too. It's nothing that's real.
I couldn't agree more. The commercial advertising industry has really done one over on the culture at large with a tremendous degree of distortion. I think, Jacque, at one point, yes, at one point, Jacque, you mentioned to me how when a woman puts on eyeliner, she's basically being dishonest, and I thought that was a very interesting way to denote that.
Well, it's our culture.
Growing every single year, and people have been brainwashed by the corporate industry to identify themselves with their property and the way they look. And I think that's a big hurdle, of course. And so
all news is managed news.
Sure.
You get what they want you to hear. You really don't have news on your broadcasting or your newspapers. Who gives a damn if somebody is getting a divorce, a movie star, or she becomes pregnant because she's not married? Who gives a damn about those things? That's irrelevant. It's a sick society that supports that. That belongs in a psychological journal, not in the newspapers.
That's a fantastic point. I couldn't agree more. I had a technical question. Somebody wanted some clarification on, you've seen that. There are people out there that do want to help. That do
Not
want
only
to
that, but you take a very powerful person, say a very wealthy person worth billions of dollars. I would say they're mentally ill.
I agree.
You don't need billions of dollars to survive. In other words, the people we admire today are the sick people of the establishment that have accumulated a great deal of wealth. That shows you how distorted the world is today. We should admire, of course we admire people in the past that worked for nothing, that made contributions to society and spent their life trying to help people. These are the people we admire. But really, after they die, hundreds of years later. But today, we admire the wrong people, the wealthy and the powerful. The most greedy people are the people we admire. So our society is distorted, very distorted, and I feel sorry for the shape of the future if we continue along these lines.
Yes, I absolutely. And I think you made a great point to me last time I saw you, where you commented that for someone to have billions of dollars is for them to consciously not want to care about all of those that die of starvation because they're withholding that money which could help. And that's something people don't often think about.
That's a conscious withdrawal of efficiency.
Right.
They are hurting people because the more people out there working on heart disease, cancer, is for your benefit. When you deprive labs of the equipment they need, not money, the equipment, that's why we call it a resource-based economy. We provide labs with whatever they need because we have the resources, but we don't have enough money to build hospitals all over the world, but we have more than enough resources.
Yes, and that's the great realization. Absolutely. On a practical note, for its own means, do you feel that's a real threat?
A real threat is ignorance.
Sure.
A public that's not informed or well-educated is a threat. And that goes for all the nations. All the nations of the world try to bring up their people to uphold established institutions. But if you work today for an electronics firm, they don't want you to turn out the same product. They want you to make your product faster. I'm talking about laptops that store more information in less space, lighter in weight. All technology is in a constant state of rapid change, whereas our political systems, they keep pounding into your head democracy and freedom. That means no change. If you have a fixed concept of society, it means you're on the way out. The nation that has no vision of what the future can be is bound to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And if we fail to grasp the significance of organized science working for the benefit of all the world's people, not for some private institution, once you realize that, you will see great advances made in society. Just imagine how foolish we are. We try to dig up nickels and dimes for research in heart disease or care packages for people injured in earthquakes. But when war comes, we produce everything, all kinds of killing machines without any worry about cost or price. Don't you see how corrupt that is, how obviously corrupt that is? Why don't we build better universities? Why don't we teach people how to relate to one another, update our language so there's no argument in it?
So when you start giving out medals or jobs in a beauty contest, the girl gets an award. Did she make her face out of soft material and mold it in extreme beauty? Then you give her some kind of medal. But if she's born that way, what the hell's that about? So the world you live in is as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. And you're not about to talk to people and turn them around. You have to demonstrate it.
In the fallacy of security, would you comment on this obsession that our current culture has with security?
Yeah, security is as long as there's no tornadoes to rip your house apart in 20 minutes. As long as the banks don't fail again, and so everything you work for is gone, even though you want to send your kids to college, the threat of unemployment threatens that, even though you'd like to send your kids to college. So you live in a system, a very predatory system, where people make a buck of human misery. In other words, if somebody bangs into your car, somebody makes money straightening out the fenders. If you need a root canal job, you might have to pay over $1,000 to have it done. And if you get medically very ill, cancer, it'll wipe out all your savings. So the whole notion of security is really an illusion put out there to keep you going. You people have been deprived of the real meaning of education. And that is learning how to live, learning how to find meaning in your own life, learning how to pursue the things you are interested in instead of the best years of your life working for a corporation. The minute you punch your time clock to go into any American industry, you're walking into a dictatorship. They tell you, well, you don't want to live in a dictatorship. What do you think you're living in? If you don't show up on time, you lose your job. If you don't work 8 hours a day and do your job, you're discharged. You don't participate. But they tell you you live in a participatory democracy. Individuality. Guy says, I think I'll come into work at 10 o'clock, sleep a little late today. He can't do that. You live in a regimented society, and society is operated a certain way. If you decided, say you're a very nice guy, you decided to pay your help $3,000 a week, they wouldn't show up Monday. They take the family on a cruise. So if you use minimum wage, they have to show up Monday.
Yes, absolutely. And if they use minimum wage, they have to purchase an old car, one they have to continually fix up. Therefore, they constantly have to work as well. So it's a self-feeding mechanism in many ways.
Right. And you can't even take your kid to a doctor if you're on minimum wage. You have to take no clinic, take a day off work, lose your pay, increase your debt, and then you can't keep taking them back. You can't afford to. You want to. In other words, the stresses imposed upon people by the type of economic system throughout the world is very painful. And I think all that can be easily overcome. Not with difficulty, easily overcome.
I absolutely agree.
Even when you get into a higher paying bracket, those that get more money end up having to keep up with other people who have that amount of money. So if your friends have a bigger boat than you need more money to get a bigger boat. You have all those values that are imposed upon you. So you're under the same situation in a lot of ways.
Yes, absolutely. Not to mention there's an erroneous stratification of destitution.
Well, if you make people uniform, you can control them. If you teach people to read and think and question things, you lose control. So the best idea is to separate people if you wish to maintain a monetary system. Have Greek studies, Polish studies, Jewish studies, black studies. You divide people. It's called divide and conquer. And so by dividing people in that way, they're not a threat. You can control them. In other words, in the days of slavery, if you taught your slaves how to read, you were fined, because they can't control people that think.
Right. Absolutely. And the issue on as a form of communication to get people to feel a certain warmth reciprocation
But
towards
if they're
each
brought
other.
up to understand that every person in society is working for your benefit, not to exploit you or take anything away from you, you will be happy to meet any new person in the future. Because they're all working to make the world a better place. But when a person says to you, I got just the house you're looking for, if they're a salesman, or they're trying to get you to buy some product of theirs, that's exploitation. When people make money on human misery, such as doctors, if they have a disease and they can't afford to have X-ray treatments or solar or MRIs, they can't go to the hospital. So how can a doctor be loyal to his profession if he uses a monetary system? If a person goes to a psychiatrist and says, I'm very troubled, and the psychiatrist says, what's your problem? He says, well, I don't earn enough to pay for all the things my family needs. And the psychiatrist, how much do you need to get by? And he writes a check out and gives it to that person. I would say he's a caring psychiatrist. But if he says that's going to cost you $65 an hour to consult with me, he's not helping that person. So in a monetary system, it's very difficult to be decent, honest, and all of these qualities that you read about that are all artificial.
Yes. And one thing I would...
The profit system actually does design things to wear out and break down, because that's the way you keep in business. Every year you got to buy new airplanes because the old become obsolete. So war has always been good business. When you're drafted into the army or you join the army to protect your country, you put your life up for the country. So they should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. Then it's real. On the same basis of pay of soldiers. But if you make millions selling aircraft to the army, he sells machine guns, she sells submarines, it's not honest. A friend of mine flew airplanes in World War I, and he said he flew over Krupp munition works 8 times with orders not to bomb it. He didn't understand that. He was a pilot to defend the United States. But after the war, Fortune magazine ran an article called Arms and the Men. Probably never heard of it. And in that magazine they said that DuPont has holdings in I.J. Farben. That's why I wasn't bombing it. So war is really not to bring democracy to other countries. It's about resources and exploitation and removal of the resources. National loyalty is really a form of stupidity. All people need clean air, clean water, arable land, and a relevant education. I don't know if I told some of you this, but the United States Army about 45 years ago dumped 65 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami, near the Gulf Stream. How can you love the country and do things like that? How can you care about people and bomb their cities? Well, fire and press a button and wipe out cities. The reason people do that, they get a medal. They get an X on the fuselage of how many planes you shot down. I used to work for Ernst Udet. He became the head, one of the top brass under the Nazis. Well, I worked for him at Roosevelt Field. And I said, how did you shoot down 70 airplanes? And he said to me, I would fly above aerial combat and watch the rookies that couldn't handle planes well and knock them off. Now, what kind of a person is that? He's a war hero, great man. Eddie Rickenbacker, the same. They're bums and stupid people brought up by an arrogant society that doesn't give a shit about anyone else but the established institutions. So I'm trying to tell you something. We must join together with all nations, take care of the earth together and one another. When you think of the cost of World War II, I'm not just talking about the military cost. I'm talking about taking care of veterans after the war for years. And then all the cities bombed out, the museums and art. You know, you remember England and Germany flattened out. Take that cost, you know what that could have done? It could have housed everyone on earth in brand new housing. Built art centers, music centers, cultural centers, housing, parks. Soldiers should be trained as problem solvers, not killers. When you train people to be killers, obviously soldiers don't know what the hell they're doing because they think they're defending their country. They're building hatred for the next 20 years. When you bomb the Arab world and flatten it out, you're not doing any good. So years ago, when I was proposing this society, I said to myself, Jacque, how are you going to change everybody in the world? They all think differently. So if you're brought up in a certain country, you're made to hate during the war. Like I used to sing in school, Pretty Parasol and Fan in far-off Japan, how nice the Japanese were. When they attacked Pearl Harbor, I was kind of disappointed. Then there was a book called The Secrets of Pearl Harbor, which I bought. And Admiral Halsey opens that book with how we got the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor. I never knew that. I never knew how corrupt war was. I never knew how corrupt our government was. I'm talking about America. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world.
Money, and you use that money to actually help and improve society. It would be cataclysmic just from a monetary
standpoint. It'd be bad for
standpoint.
business, though.
Oh, that's for sure.
War is big business. Always remember that. People make millions of dollars. Whenever they grab soldiers in the army, they ought to conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war, so there's no profit in war. Then there'd be no basis for it. War is not about bringing democracy to other countries. It's about exploiting resources.
Yes.
And setting up cheap labor, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
But the lies that the soldiers are given by governments, they're not responsible. They can say whatever they want to say. And the soldier really believes he's fighting to defend his country, which is so awful. They're trying to get hold of a book called Arms and the Men. It goes into the corruption of war. Even Eisenhower said, beware of the military-industrial complex. Too bad he didn't spell it out in detail.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, here's a different question.
We resent a murderer or a thief. We resent that, but we don't resent war. That's amazing. If somebody kills somebody, we get angry. The abortionists, those that are against abortion, you'd imagine they'd be at the forefront against war because it kills everybody. Right. Unborn children, women, everybody. And you'd imagine they'd line up against war. But the brain is so manipulated by the culture, they become angry at using the wrong fork. If you go to dinner at a proper place, use the wrong fork, people become angry and disappointed in you. But if you're a racist, they don't, which is amazing. We live in a very unsane culture. I do not believe we'll make the history books of the future, except as a pathetic development in human evolution.
I think you're absolutely right.
I'm sorry about that. I don't like what I said, but I think that that's so.
If we make it into the future.
Yes.
Well, I think George Carlin put it best. We're barely out of the jungle on this planet. And I think that's absolutely accurate.
Mark Twain had a good one, too, when he said that the Earth is the insane asylum of the universe.
Yes, that's fantastic. Well, I hope we can continue to educate and get people.
Culture seems to adhere to a system that worked years ago. That's why the old language and the old value system people cling to, because it's what they identify themselves with. When you bring up something new that challenges the words they use, the thoughts they have, and the values that are dominant, they're not about to extend their hand and say, you've taken me out of an old system that never worked in the first place. Thank you very much. They get angry instead, because to them you're calling them suckers. To them, you're saying everything you've learned in school is BS, and a lot of things you believe are not so. You can't do that without invoking anger in people. So they need to identify with something, and someday in the future, all cultures will be emergent in a constant state of change and growth. An established culture tries to keep things as they are. All nations today are really established cultures. We need an emergent culture that is constantly ongoing change. Not only that, it prepares people to accept change emotionally and intellectually. That would be an advancing culture.
Absolutely, and that would be obviously in accord with what we see all around us in nature.
Today,
Absolutely.
politicians stay in power because they need money in order to get reelected. They need money constantly, and people don't put them in or give them money. They're represented by the industries, and the lobbies sway the politicians to make the laws how they want them represented. So if they don't help different industries who put them in, they won't get the funds to continue to be politicians. So they don't represent people. They're not really there for the good of the people. They're there to represent those in those in power and positions of differential advantage.
That's true. So you don't have a society that concerns itself with people. The very proof of that is to take the profit out of war and see what happens. People make a lot of money during war. You know, in technology today, your computers are getting faster, better, lighter, smaller, and they do much more. Your cameras have no film anymore. They're also cell phones. Things are getting better technically, but our social values are hundreds of years old, and the whole idea of electing politicians to political office is really obsolete. They do not have the ability to solve problems. They don't even know what the problem is. If you ask a politician, why is the crime rate increasing during Depression? What makes aberrant behavior? Ask a judge that or a lawyer. They have no idea, yet they're in charge of governments. These are the most ignorant people in the world today. Scientists are called upon to make atomic weapons. Of course they're not bright in that area, and they make atomic weapons. If they were really scientists, they would try to understand other nations and try to bridge the difference, not develop killing machines.
What subjects in, I guess we'll just say high school level, what subjects are relevant to a resource-based economy?
First of all, I'd like to skip that high school bit.
Okay.
Children can learn all about geology, astronomy, mathematics. They don't have to be told a little Dickie Deer and the sheep. They don't have to be given fairy tales about Cinderella. They can learn continental drift. They can learn all about how we depend on the environment for survival. If we pollute the ocean, it hurts us. Children don't have to be told all these phony stories. People think that the child's mind is interested only in fairy tales, Jacque and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, or the Mickey Mouse Club. That's an insult to the human brain, the Mickey Mouse Club. My children were always interested in any subject at all that related to the world we live in. Don't have to bring them up with that garbage. You make it impossible for them to reason later on if you bring them up with fairy tales.
They have to undo all that. Then you want them to become realistic and scientific. They can't. They're raised on emotions and hopes and wishes and aspirations. You know, when kids are young, they can learn how beavers build dams, how the rings in the trees show you the ages and the weather conditions at the time. They can learn all sorts of things that's just as interesting and more interesting than the fairy tales they give them, the brutal fairy tales they give them.
So education starts very young, and the subject matter will be many different.
That's great. And on the notion of people learning to work together, you had some very interesting angles on that.
For example, we might have craft shops in the future where 6 kids get together, and the car that they're building will not go together unless 4 kids lift it up and the other 2 put the wheels on. But we don't advocate cooperation. It's just that things don't go together if they don't cooperate. So they find that working together is much more useful than being competitive.
Right.
The sharing of ideas. And that would happen also in all education. If you keep children away from fairy tales, Jacque and the Beanstalk, Mickey Mouse clubs, things of that sort, children can learn technology, continental drift, seismology. They can learn all about technology. It isn't necessary to give them fairy tales.
They have to undo all that in the
Right.
future. Then they have more propensity to hopes and wishes and metaphysics because they don't have a grounding in science. How do you eliminate jealousy?
For example, you generate jealousy. A lot of people think it's just part of human nature. They think that greed is part of human nature. You manufacture jealousy in the home when you favor one child. If instead of picking up the youngest child and playing with it, and while the 7-year-old stands by and watches you, you're producing jealousy and envy. That's where it comes from. Favoritism, where you hold up one child against the other. You say, why can't you be like your brother? He puts everything in place and you leave everything laying around. And so that produces bad feelings. Another thing that produces jealousy and envy is grading children in school. You give some an A, some a B, some a C, some an F. When you do that, you immediately manufacture jealousy and envy. So no child would be held up in front of another child or awarded or given credit. That's very special. You don't do that in the front of other children. You create more harm than you do constructive, cooperative behavior.
Another thing about children, exercise wouldn't be mandatory, but you build it into the environment. For instance, the kids like to go to a craft shop. So there's a big lake and a hill, an island in the middle of the lake that has a hill, and the craft shop is on top of the hill. So they have to get in a boat and row and then climb the hill. So the exercise is built in. We call it functional exercise.
Right, that's great.
The leader in the future. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Interesting thing. So we really don't know what to look for in terms of rearing children to become creative. When my own little boy came to me and said, Daddy, the wheel came off my car, and I took it and I threw it in the wastebasket. And I watched that kid from the side, and that lower lip went out, and he said, Daddy, why did you throw it away? And I said, I'll get you baby toys where the wheels don't come off. And he said, maybe I can fix it. Then I took it back out of the garbage and gave it to him, and he really did try to get the wheel on, and after a few minutes, he got it on. Then I picked him up and said, that's wonderful. How did you do that? He says, I'm not that little. And then I said to him, how did you do it? He said, you see the hole in the wheel and the iron shaft sticking up? He didn't use shaft, piece of iron sticking up. I pushed the wheel, the hole over the iron shaft, and that's how I fixed it. And that's when you reward kids. But if you say, let Daddy do this for you, let Daddy solve that for you, always coming to Daddy for solutions, you produce a blob that doesn't think at all.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to put your kid in a confrontation situation where they learn how to solve problems. But if you do everything for them, you kill incentive and creativity.
To create human beings that actually work together and respect each other. That's really the point, wouldn't you say?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
In other words, if you bring up children in a home with warmth and love, they have warmth and love to give. If they're brought up in a home where the parents fight continuously and the child is neglected, that child has no warmth to give. You don't put him in jail. He's a victim of culture.
Science has been used to both support and then denounce this whole concept of global warming and climate change. And that there are those who say that, hey, this is the cycle the planet goes through every so many hundreds of thousands of years. And then there are others who say man did this. And they're using science. What's wrong with this picture? Help me to understand why that's not what you're talking about.
No, not at all.
Right. Today, everything really is bought out. Within a monetary system, everything becomes corrupt. You can't tell when they do a science research program who paid for it, what was their outcome, what are they trying to sell, What's the motive behind it? And whenever money's in the situation, you can't tell if science is real or not. You can't tell anything if anything's real. Say somebody needs to have a doctor says they have to have a kidney out. Do they really need to have a kidney out, or does a doctor need to pay off a boat or a mortgage? You know, everything is really bastardized, and we're all prostitutes in this system. So when you get money out of the scenario, and to have anything real and not corrupt in a society that works for everyone, you have to get money out of the picture. And today, our social system was designed hundreds of years ago, but our technology is racing forward so that we have the ability with our technology to produce abundance all over the world. Not, you know, a lot of people say that we don't have the resources, and they look at it the way we do things today, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about using science and technology and our resources wisely with environmental protection and for the benefit of everyone.
Okay.
So we really do have enough resources if we design things differently and we organize differently.
And so if I'm...
For example, soldiers are killing machines.
Mm-hmm.
We would take soldiers in the future, send them back to school so they wouldn't have to pay anything for it, and become problem solvers. Imagine the kind of world you have if soldiers were trained to solve problems. For example, when you drive a car, you see a sign, drive carefully, slippery when wet.
Mm-hmm.
We will put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet. No more lip service, no more laws made by man, only natural law. If you don't get enough sleep, nutritious food, you get sick. Man-made laws, most of them, are to control people. They have nothing to do with reality.
I am extremely elated and excited about by your concepts and what you have to share with us.
And there are lots of them. Some people try to equate the Venus Project with fascism or communism. Communism uses money, it has military systems, it has banks, it has social discrimination, it has politicians. We don't have any of those things. We don't have money, banks, prisons, police, or any of the systems used in the old world. They didn't know how to solve problems, so they put people in prison. When people have access to the necessities of life without debt, they don't steal.
We have the technology today to create what people call a second Garden of Eden on Earth, to make all goods and services available to everyone without money, barter, servitude, or debt of any kind. We can do that with our technology, but our social design is so old that it hasn't kept up with our ability to produce abundance all over the world and just make goods and services available, and then work on the things, not fight each other over resources like we're doing today, but fight against things that threaten everybody, like heart disease, cystic fibrosis, tsunamis, hurricanes. We'd work on things that are essential for the well-being of people.
Consider all the money spent on World War II by all the nations, and all the lives lost, and all the ships lost under the sea, and all the pollutants. For the money of World War II spent by all nations, we could have housed everybody, built hospitals all over the world, and eliminated poverty, hunger, and starvation all over the world. How stupid can you be? Today we have 300 submarines. Each one has more destructive power than all the wars in history. Where can you go with that? What can you accomplish with that? How stupid can you be? Politicians have no answers at all. They are totally unqualified. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Socialist, or Communist, you don't have any approach to the problems.
Project that Carl Sagan researched about.
How did you get inspired about a resource-based economy? How did it come about?
Well, it came about during the Big Depression, the crash when the banks failed, people lost their houses, their cars, and I saw 15 million people sleeping in every empty lot in the New York area. But the stores had vacuum cleaners, radios in the store windows, but people just didn't have money when the banks failed. And so I noticed that the veterans of World War I marched on Washington, and they wanted their bonus The government promised them money when they got out of the war, and the government didn't have the money to pay them, so they came with crutches and wheelchairs, and they slept all around the Capitol in Washington, and it didn't look good. So what the congressman said is, get them out of there. And Douglas MacArthur, I believe, was a captain then, and he had the Army throw tear gas at the veterans of World War I, and that cinched the deal for me. That showed me that nobody really cared about people. They just used them. The only real evidence of caring is that the government or that industry would never outsource if they love the American people. When you outsource, you say, look, I'm outsourcing for profit. I want the product at the lowest cost. Well, look, if you have a factory and you don't outsource and you pay your help above minimum wage and you build a playground for the women's children that work in your factory, you're not going to get any investors. Investors invest money in a system that shows a profit. So being decent human beings does not fortify your industry.
Another example another experience that Jacque went through to arrive at a resource-based economy was when he was in his 20s. He went to the South Seas in an island called Tuamotu, where it was so primitive that everyone walked around nude at that time, and it was kind of a resource-based economy in a way that when they got fish in the ocean, when they went fishing, they would take the fish when they got to shore and just throw it to everyone who was on the shore. And they didn't say, you owe me $5 for that, you owe me interest for that. They just shared things.
That's where I got the idea. Also, the main idea that I got for a resource-based economy was the human body. If the brain said, I do all the thinking, I want all the nutrients, the lungs would say, if I don't oxygenate the air, you would die as a brain. So the brain says to the lungs, what do you need? Everything you need. Then the liver would say, and the kidneys, if we don't act as a filter, the brain and the lungs would die. So all the organs of the human body get whatever they need. And that's exactly the way the world of the future would operate.
He came upon this system long before Carl Sagan was born, I think.
From people that are in the movement, and I'm going to hopefully, let's see here. Here's a good one that I've sort of answered before, but I think it'd be great for you to extend on this. Do you feel that a political movement would be a good way to gain popularity and move into the transitional phase? In other words, this person's asking, such as like the technocracy concept, do you feel that there should be a political movement associated with the Venus Project?
Not a political movement, an educational movement.
Very good, yeah.
Tell people what it is that's needed, how much arable land to support so many people, and transportation that would be safe. An educational project that shows how to utilize our existing resources in a more equitable way for all people. I think that all people need medical care from birth to death without a price tag. And that goes for everything that they need should be available to all people. Anything less than that will produce what you call aberrant behavior.
Once you start to get involved in politics, even if you have good intentions in the beginning, it gets so corrupted, and it's based on so much money to get in and having to achieve so much money to stay there that you owe so many people different favors. It just never comes out the same, even if they have good intentions.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. I feel that the political structure is inherently...
My mother insisted that I go to church, and so the minister was talking about how wonderful God is. He makes it rain to make the plants grow. So I raised my hand and said, I wanted to know why it rained at sea. And he said, hold your hands out, and he beat the shit out of me. He really beat me up badly with a ruler for asking that question. He was also a stupid man. You know, I only wanted to know. I was not there to contradict him. I wanted to understand what he was saying. So I kept away from religion because I always found that the people there just recited things.
like rote memory. They had no answers in between. They said the Lord works in strange ways, you know. I said, if I designed a bridge and it caved in, I can't say it's an act of God. You know, it's bad mathematics or flawed engineering, you know what I mean? There's no way to say the Lord works in strange ways. Fresco doesn't work in strange ways. He has to understand these things. So I found that all religious people, although sincere, were not well read. And when they read things that differed from their religious teachings, they avoided it. They didn't inquire into things, and they didn't learn how to question all things. So lots of things were happening. People were moving toward metaphysics. That is, they believe there are things beyond the physical world, and if only we would give that attention, we would find out that it's not just the physical world, but there's worlds beyond the physical. And I wanted to know all about that, because what the hell am I working in a lab for, trying to find out how things work, if there's such a thing as telepathy and consciousness? By opening your mind and meditating on your navel in the forest, you might get revelations. Without real knowledge, I couldn't imagine how anyone got any revelations. So I went to hundreds of seances and metaphysical meetings, and I saw strange things, because 2 Catholic priests used to attend my seminars, and they said, the trouble with you, Jacque, is you think everything could be solved materially, but there are things beyond the material. I said, I have never seen any yet. Have you? And they said, many times. I said, take me there, that's all, and let me see them. Well, they said they knew a woman at Palm Springs that had the power of telekinesis. So I said, you know, what's that? You know, she can move objects without touching them. I said, take me there, because if that's so, the hell with science. I'm not interested in working my butt off when you can concentrate on things and reduce cancer and everything else. So I went to Palm Springs, but before I went there, I said, can I check it out when I'm there? He asked the woman, the priest, she said, of course. So I went there, and she put this big vase on the table, and she concentrated on it, and it began to move down the table. So I took my fountain pen, which was made of metal, and I'm moving it around the table, because I suspect something, and I got a 60-cycle hum. So I peeled the veneer off, and she had a bell buzzer with 4 rubber shock mounts. The table was highly polished and slightly tilted, and it moved. So I said, Father Dunn, here's how it's done, see? So she said to me, you SOB, you get the hell out of here. So I said, just a minute, I'm not your enemy. When you tell these kids you have magical powers, the people that were there, they don't work on problems. They hope things will work out. You have to get up off your butt and work on them. Blindness, leprosy, AIDS, whatever, you have to work and do a lot of studying. Hoping you get well and praying doesn't work, because I've never known a guy without an arm that went to Lourdes and says, I need an arm. Or without an eyeball. I need an eyeball. They always pray for things that are feasible. You know, I got a toothache. Will it diminish? Well, it usually does. And people get sick, and they usually get well in most instances unless you go to an old folks' home. It's less probable. So prayer seemed ridiculous, because a guy would come with no legs and say, I need legs badly. And he'd have legs. That would be a miracle. And then I watched the Pope. When he prays, he always points to God. But when he goes to China, he points the wrong way. You know what I mean? He points the opposite direction. Depends on where he is in the world. He's pointing all over the place.
In the Bible, such as Jesus said, by their work you shall know them, not what they talk about. People go to church and they talk a lot, asking God for favors to carry out things that will serve their own self-centered interest. The real Christian are like doctors without borders, doctors that work, save up money, and go and help the poor countries. People like Gandhi, who work for nothing. People like Mother Teresa, who work for nothing. And people like Martin Luther King, who work for nothing. I don't trust people who work for money. In other words, there are many wonderful people in the world that really work to help other people. This is true Christianity. But when you have a church and when you have a minister that goes to dinner with the wealthy people because they're the only ones that can put a new organ in the church or a new chandelier, whereas Jesus would go to dinner with the poor. He would associate with bums, beggars, and prostitutes, the least of human beings. If there was a soft bed, Jesus would say, you sleep in it, I'll sleep on the ground. Remember this, when the Pope comes to America, he points upward. When he goes to China, he points the wrong way, because they used to think the earth was flat. The Pope hasn't even learned that yet. So you see, there's many discrepancies in religion, such as, ye shall not bear false witness. You're always bearing false witness in religion, when the true answer is, I don't know. Learn how to say, I don't know. But everybody knows what God wants, and when they say God's on our side, God bless America, who the hell are you to tell God who to bless? If he made every person on earth and every living thing, you have no business telling him to God bless America. Don't you see the insult and stupidity of organized religion?
They make God into their own image. He gets angry, he produces floods, he has grudges, he puts you in hell for eternity. Even if you get mad at somebody, you usually, make up with them after a period of time, but no, he puts them in there for eternity. That's religion. And so they make God into a psychopath. It's not like a God. They make God in their own image. And also they say, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's no war in heaven. There's no money in heaven. It sounds more like a resource-based economy.
10 years from now, 15 years from now, it differs continuously.
I like the definition you give, Jacque, of closer approximations of reality. If you're into a world of Christianity or any type of religion, it's really not appropriate to what's real out there. Demons and devils and, the devil got into you. They still talk about the devil being in you. It's just not real anymore. We've learned so many better tools of how to deal with the earth and one another. Instead of the religious people think in terms of right and wrong and good and bad. And today we know that we have better ways of evaluating how people behave the way they do or why they behave the way they do.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's important that people...
And some people followed him, they call them Christians. Before that, they used to believe in the God of love, the God of war. They had many different gods. Finally, they canned all the gods and reduced it to one God, usually as dumb as the people that created him. He's not a very bright God. He makes a son, and then he sacrifices his son. This doesn't make sense, because the witnesses say that Jesus arose and from the dead and went back to heaven. That means there was no sacrifice. Don't you see that? It's so obvious if you read your Bible. It's so loaded with contradictions, you'd have to be a pinhead not to see that. That you'll see that the gods that man made are more like man. They're not brilliant. They don't show any indications of very astute thinking. They're very crude, actually, very primitive. There are some people believe in Africa that the boo-boo tree controls everything. Of course, you can set that aside and say, well, that's nonsense. If you read your Bible honestly, you'll find that it's a very crude batch collection of myths put together that are really ridiculous.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just the belief systems that are pushed down upon people that give...
They had a lot of verification to prove that the earth was round, but they did not meet with social people who thought it was flat and say, listen, folks, it's a little round and a little flat. Then you can get along with most people. It is not the business of science to get along. It's a business of science to explain the nature of physical phenomena, whereas religion invents stories about where the earth came from, where we came from, that God took some clay and made a man and a woman. These are terrible myths. They're so low grade. I am very disappointed in the fact that a lot of people still believe in those fairy tales. They, take Noah's Ark, for example. It would have to be a mile long. It'd be loaded with flies. The story is so fantastic, fabulously made up, obviously. And you'll notice that all the gods in all the religions are more like the people that invented them. They get angry, they create floods, they create disease, and if you don't follow the teachings of God, you burn eternally. That sounds more like a psychopath than God. Don't you see? People make God in their own image.
Today, politicians stay in power.
Now, most people don't know where the earth came from. They don't know where life came from. And so they invented a God who made a man and a woman, then he kicked them out of that beautiful garden. How did he do that? Snakes used to walk upright. And the snake said, eat of the fruit of knowledge. Who made the snake? God. But he loves you. He made the snake, and then he says, screw around with your best friend's wife. That's what the tempter was. So the snake was finished so bad that God got angry at what he created. And said, from now on you have to crawl on your belly. So that's another thing they have about horses. The reason a horse sleeps standing up, because some holy man once asked this horse to take him across the river. And the horse said, no, you have to sleep standing up. So you have all this stupidity. Galileo found seashells on the mountaintop. He took it to the Catholic Church, and he said, maybe the mountain was once under the water and was pushed up. And the church said, no, the devil put that stuff there to confuse you. Now, anybody that believes in God, you must think that the kind of God man makes more like themselves. The guy that gets angry, creates flood, disease, that isn't God. And if you don't follow the Bible according to God's teachings or your religion, you burn eternally. That sounds more like a psychopath, not God. So, if you believe in, I asked Einstein once, do you believe in God? He said, which one? I said, well, he knew that the Jewish God says, if a man takes your son's eye out, you take his son's eye out. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The Christian God says, when a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. That's what he means by which one. All these gods are jerks that man made. They're more like themselves. They get angry, create floods, disease, all kinds of things. And you say, why did the bubonic plague kill half of the earth's population? And the church would say, we shall suffer for the sins of our parents. Scientists, when the bubonic plague began to wipe out people, they said, we don't know why that happens. That's very good. I don't know. So they found that fleas that live on rats infected people with the plague, and they began to kill the rat population and wiped out the plague. So I don't say science is perfect, but it's closer to our problems than any other system. So when man makes laws, you can go to Sing Sing prison, you see guys with a cross around their neck. And I remember during World War II how the minister of my church at that time, he blessed the war tanks and he blessed the soldiers. It was Catholic. And in Italy, they were blessing the war tanks there. Same priest, same religion. Religious people are extremely stupid because if you open the Bible, you'll see that Noah's Ark would have to be at least a mile long to take 2 kinds of every animal. And where do you get the polar bear and the giraffe? You know. And the ship would be so full of shit. Who cleans it out? So the stories in the Bible are not bad. They're fantastically elementary. Stupid stories about Moses lifting up his wand and the Red Sea parted. God could put the people on the other side of the Red Sea without parting it. Just go like that. And they say that God so loveth the world that he gave his only begotten Son that others might have eternal life and not perish. Well, when you examine that, the witnesses, according to the Bible, say after Jesus was good, he arose and went back into heaven. Where the hell's the sacrifice? You understand what I mean? Read your Bible. Don't take my word for it. It's such a bunch of garbage written by very ignorant people, like our language was designed hundreds of years ago. That's why I say we can't talk. Everything was okay. And it had white wings. Now, all the angels painted on the ceiling in church, the wings are too small. They have to be at least the length of the body. Now, if the angels flew without wings, that would be a miracle. I'd like to fly around without this sort of thing. So it's the way we operate to produce the conditions. Just as you make jealousy and envy. If my wife fell in love with somebody else and wanted to leave, normal people say, "You're not breaking up the home, you little tramp," you know. The question is, it means you're not meeting her needs. It doesn't mean you're bad. If the husband seeks other women, he may be tit man, leg man, ass man, hair man. Men are brought up with all these different values in this system. If you cover a girl, you're going to create problems. So I went to the South Seas when I was 21, and I lived on the island of Tuamotu for a while, chain of islands, near Tahiti, French territory. Everybody on the island was nude, except when men climbed trees. They wore kind of a jockstrap to prevent their balls from being caught in the branches. So everybody walked around nude. And the interesting thing about it is I never saw a native stare at a girl's body, only her eyes. When he talked to a woman, you never say, "Hey, get a load of that chick." That's what you get in civilization. You cover the girl. If people swam nude when they were this high, you couldn't sell pictures of a nude girl. Do you understand that? It's when you cover them up, if we just say curiosity. No kid in the islands was a peeping Tom, because everybody walked around nude. You couldn't sell a magazine, a girly magazine. You couldn't run a pornographic movie. It would have no meaning. They made love when they were able to, and nobody of us shot an eye. Interesting thing, I got to know the natives so well, I watched them make love. And they stroked the whole female, the top of the head all the way down. They had no fetishes. There were no tit men, leg men, ass men. All that's made by culture. And if you don't use that kind of language around women, you can't become equal to one another. So you have to tell them how men think. That isn't how they think. That's how they're brought up. When guys poke each other, "Hey, get a load of that chick," you know. That is learned in the culture. In the islands, they never did that. It's like you stroking a dog. You stroke the whole dog. You don't stop at the balls. You stroke the whole dog. Understand? So I think is it time to open it up to questions.
With a deep understanding of how it is that we get to be the way we are. And I think Roxanne told you that today all the big cities have embalming fluid in the reservoirs. Because you can't keep putting it into the dead, put it in the ground, it goes down the water table and into the water. Who's going to water your grave 150 years from now? It was ridiculous. So I told Roxanne, if anything happened to me, cremation, then flush me down the toilet. I don't need any monuments or anything. It's while you're alive, you do the best you can.